When you choose to build a business, you can't take your journey as a fixed path. It's just not a fixed path. In that early pre-seed journey for any founders, it's putting everything on the table, coming up with some mechanism to really prioritize. Build a really great team, build a really good business, deliver on your vision. All of your strategic opportunities will arrive if you do that well.
You walk into their office, one pitch works.
Hello, I'm Richard Baker. I'm the founder and CEO of Tokenovate, a Cambridge and London-based deep tech fintech.
Hi, I'm Andrei Kirilenko. I'm professor of finance at the Cambridge Judge Business School. I've known you for a while, but perhaps the viewers would like to find out more about you in your own words.
Good to do this, Andrei. Thank you for the fireside chat. Really good to sit down and do this. It's been a little while coming. Grew up in Southern Ireland, always inquisitive about technology. I think I was taking electrical sockets off the wall at home at age 7. So I went on a journey to become an electronics engineer and spent the first 15 of my years in corporate world, so working in telecommunications markets. We laid down the foundations of 70% of the world's optical fiber. And then this little company appears one day in 1991 called Cisco Systems, and they started to challenge our data business. We're laying the pipes, but they start to build on top of the pipes. They start to build out the next layers that start to form these communication pathways for the internet to be formed. So I anchor to that because I think when you choose to build a business, you can't take your journey as a fixed path. It's just not a fixed path. Competition emerges, markets change, technology, particularly now, changes so rapidly. So I think the first thing about being a founder is maintaining an agile mind. I think part of that agile mind links to, are you paying attention to the inflection points that keep presenting to you in the market?
They're not very obvious, as you said. They just sort of pop up, there's something small, and you're like, yeah, whatever.
Exactly. I really enjoyed working in big companies, but I was always a creative. I was always looking to challenge the normal, and I really wanted to kind of break free from the corporate restrictions. And that eventually led me to 2009, moving into financial services and building my first business, which was a futures exchange back in the heart of capital markets in financial services. So I built a business in Singapore called Clear Trade Exchange. And that became a central limit order book to trade industrial commodities. So
that whole business is lines of code, correct?
That whole business was lines of code. Yeah, we built lots of software.
There's no one gesticulating anywhere. This is just lines of code.
Lines of code. Lots of connecting things up. I think people underestimate when you build any product. You've really got to kind of pay attention to, well, what world are you integrating into? How do you go about making sure you connect with existing traditional legacy systems, but at the same point, there's always something new emerging around you. So no matter what you build, you can't be certainly in the enterprise, in the corporate markets by yourself. Your software is always going to be touching into something else.
Did you build your own matching engine facility, or was someone else doing it for you on the cloud?
We designed what we wanted, and then I had a company in Sweden build that for me. So we brought that in. We were the first exchange actually to go on Microsoft Azure. So we ran the matching engine and all of the trading pathways in the Azure cloud. And for 2012, that was quite innovative. So I built that business over 7 years, and that was my first exit. I sold that business into Deutsche Börse Group, the German exchange group. An amazing experience. I think 2017, when I sold that business, I was exploring the next new technology, which was blockchain. Blockchain was emerging in the world through the publication of the Bitcoin white paper. I really liked the concept of what Bitcoin could do, or blockchain technology could do for the financial market. So I started to explore whether any of those particular networks were capable of doing clearing and settlement of trades back in 2017, 2018, but nothing was. Nothing was built, nothing was mature. But I stayed with it. After I exited, I started to play around with the technology. And that led me here in Cambridge to build a company called Tokenovate 3.5 years ago, which is a play on tokenizing novation. And in the legal context, novation is how you move rights and title between counterparties in a financial trade. So we're using blockchain technology and the programming techniques, linked to tokenization to rebuild financial markets, to build out new ways of thinking about trading instruments. So I guess as we chat this through, I've just taken aback really about how many different inflection points my career has had through the advent of just new technologies, new techniques that become, a moment in time to kind of inspire and challenge the world and build services in a new way. So when I think about that for a second, when myself and my co-founders started Tokenovate in 2022, we locked ourselves in a room for 6 months, whiteboarding. Okay, can we do this? Are we qualified to do this? Is the idea sharp enough? And, we got to a point where all of that product market fit brainstorming around where the value proposition is it big enough for corporate markets, enterprise markets? And maybe, as you know well, when you're interacting with so many people, if you're building in consumer, you can get to the value proposition really quickly. But when you're building in big enterprise, it's very, very complicated to find your product market fit. So I think in that early pre-seed journey for any founders, it's putting everything on the table, coming up with some mechanism to really prioritize, what you're looking at as value propositions, road test it as best you can with some willing, friendly customers, which we did, and that helps you prioritize. And that's where you start your business from. And so we raised seed capital around that, started to build out that as a proof of concept, and then we've been scaling ever since, really. And so, yeah, I love these kinds of journeys. They're just really motivating.
So you're not building your own blockchain.
No,
you're using another blockchain as sort of a variant of Bitcoin blockchain.
Yes, I think as we come to the end of 2025, there's about 1,000 different blockchains on the planet. I think perhaps linked to my original telecommunications background, really look at just 2 protocols. The original Bitcoin concept is a proof of work UTXO-based blockchain. And then the next one that's really quite popular is a proof of stake account-based ledger system, which is the Ethereum format. So what matters to me is really the foundational layers. Layer 1, I want to run my business, and I believe the journey ahead for a lot of big enterprises in financial markets will be which layer 1 can run this logic for the future at a layer 1, at a base layer. A lot of the chains that we have are scaling layers. They lose a lot of value. They don't package the transactions well. So I build on a Bitcoin-based format, and that's a pretty successful network. It's a high throughput network, now doing 1 million transactions a second. The UTXO is the unspent transaction output. And really, if you look at it carefully, it was designed on the same format as TCP/IP networks. So actually, it's a programmable value container. You can unlock it, treat it as a packet, and program value into it and writes, close it, and move it around the network in a very clever way. And that's what we do.
So what was the most difficult sort of mental pivot that you had to do?
I think, well, for me, and it's been a bit of a constant one in my career, is my appetite to move fast and change the world is way quicker than the customer base I want to work with can actually receive. And so I think my mental pivot is when you hear in a chosen market that you go into, and in our case, in financial markets, the adoption of blockchain, the rise of digital assets, the tokenization of everything. When you pick up a paper or read your news on your browser in the morning, you just hear that it's everywhere. And so you feel like you're being left behind. But the reality actually of adoption cycles, of the velocity, is much, much different. And so I think the biggest pivot for me is we'd built generation 1 of our platform. And really, we found that actually the adoption cycles in enterprise were much slower for boring reasons. There was still a big issue on, well, how do you do privacy on a public chain? What is this tokenization thing, Richard? You're doing it, but help me understand.
So a lot of education.
A lot of education. And that is still actually the truth today, I think, Andrei. We have really big change going on in financial services globally. I think every bank, every asset manager, every stock market understands the opportunity of digitizing, tokenizing, share classes, different asset classes, expressing and moving value in different ways. But how you do it, the techniques you do it with, legally how it works, economically what it will look like in the future, very, very big learning curves there. So we underestimated that. So I had to reset. We reset it. This isn't just a technology story. This has to be about those other things that the clients value. What is the economic pathway? What is the legal pathway? How do they go on a change journey in their organizations? And so, yeah, I found that difficult. That became one big reset for us about 18 months ago.
Tell me more.
Well, that's the power of road testing, I guess. We got out in the market in 23, 24, so over 150 people, companies. So you have to be brave.
You were proposing, remind me if I remember it correctly, you were proposing effectively wallets for brokers to be able to engage in trading transactions, with each other, and then clear them, settle them through a variant of the Bitcoin blockchain. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I guess maybe the context here is the parties that we're trying to work with in the world are the very big investment banks, the very big investment managers that day in, day out trade things like interest rate derivatives, currency swaps. They're dealing with a lot of equity derivatives, and a derivative at its heart is a legal and economic expression of a risk management contract. So people enter derivatives to hedge out and risk manage an underlying exposure they may have in their businesses between the trades they're in each day. And so, believe it or not, that market is very mature. There's a master legal agreement that underpins that industry globally. If anybody watched The Big Short, you will have seen Margot Robbie in a bath talking about that master agreement, which was the ISDA master agreement. Those are, incredibly trusted legal and economic. And I say economic in the fact that part of the legal construct is a schedule that deals with the collateral, the assets that are able to be pledged between you and me. We put them in a document and say, look, my bonds, my gilts, my cash is in this construct. In a trade, I will pledge these things to you. So the journey that we're on really is about taking that very big analog paper contract and all of those detached schedules that don't run in common systems throughout the banks and those funds. They're all in silos. There's a lot of manual touch points, and that creates a delay in the market. And often that's communicated as the time plus 2 days settlement window. So I'll enter a trade, and then 2 days later, we will have delivered our trade to each other and settled out the payment schedule for that. We're largely digitizing what is referred to as the middle and the back office workflow. So we won't touch, in our business, we won't touch the front office teams. So where there's a very colorful, attractive matching engine or broker engines on the front office desks, we receive trades from those tools. And instead of now this cycle taking 2 days, we do it atomically, immediately. It now takes 30 seconds. That's a huge transformation for the market. All of a sudden, all of the parties know where their records are immediately. And this is one of the superpowers of blockchain technology. It's a distributed database technology. So it really immediately means that everybody in the workflow gets a instantaneous update as to an event that just happened. And that event is immutable, so it can be trusted. Whereas existing traditional databases can be manipulated. And that was one of the attractivenesses of a blockchain database. But now that I've settled a trade instantly, that has a very big impact to the parties involved in that we've just compressed the use of their cash. We've just compressed the time to settlements. We've taken a lot of risk out of the cycle. And this releases for society, quite frankly, a huge amount of working capital that can be put to better use to rebuild mortgage products, to rebuild insurance products, to help pensions work better. And so actually getting this inefficiency out of the market.
Or to speculate more.
Or to speculate more.
Well, that happens they're going to do all of this good things.
Absolutely, absolutely. We won't change that behavior. But what motivates me is very much to try and really improve the safeguarding by removing a lot of those risk parameters in the cycle. So as I'm talking, I come back to maybe what we started with, which is, so this is why it's complicated. You're building a platform, you're dealing with lots of different parties in the market. We've got to touch on those different parts of their operational organization. So on any given day, we're talking to a compliance officer, we're talking to the head of trade operations, we're talking to The front office teams, if you go inside a big bank, you tend to find that the profit and loss is owned by the front office, and everybody else in mid and back office, works into that profit and loss. So you've got to really understand your stakeholder map. How are you going to encourage them to use your technology and see you as a good provider? And I think that's the bit that takes us into, when you're building a startup, don't underestimate sales. Sales is so goddamn hard. You need to be able to talk the customer's language, but you've really got to be able to network these organizations and figure out who's making those decisions, who are the stakeholders that are going to sponsor you. And I think a lot of founders kind of leave that a little bit too late. That doesn't come up till you're kind of on the crest of running out of your money. You've done a great job with your technology. You think it's fantastic, but you haven't validated enough with the customer, and you haven't found those stakeholders in your sales cycle who are going to adopt you and help you become successful.
So what works? You walk into their office, what pitch works?
The elevator pitch works. These people are really busy. So you have to be able to distill your proposition to very succinct value. So my pitch is, we are automating post-trade to T0 settlement cycles.
Okay.
And you need to be as crisp as that, no matter what you're building. It comes down to one sentence.
Is there money involved in that? We're automating, so you are asking them to pay you. So presumably you need to give them some number about how much it's going to save them. Does that work?
Of course it does, yeah. That's never in the early conversation. I think what you're really trying to find is, do I resonate with somebody that has a strategic problem? Do they want to go on this change journey? I think unpacking the sales cycle into, well, I'm really trying to find a strategic buyer, an influencer, a shapeholder in a big organization. They're never really the ones going, well, is this, £1, Richard, or 50 pence? That conversation comes through a value conversation. There's an expectation, I would say, Andrei, that yes, you are going to save, with new technology, you're going to save an organization money. I think in unlocking the cycle I've talked about, this T+2 cycle, the business case that comes with that unlock is a little bit more complicated. So it's not about the price of our software. It's about what we unlock in their organization and their workflows. And that's powerful when you get there, but you need that executive sponsor to be willing to bring you in to do that business case work to find that value. And again, I would say that's very much a very big difference between building a SaaS company that's talking to consumer retail markets and a deep tech SaaS, where we're a deep tech fintech. If you choose to build a deep tech business, it takes you a little bit longer to unlock the value proposition. So get your top level pitch right, find your stakeholders, they become your sponsors to help you then demonstrate the business case value.
But you are someone who sees things through over a long period of time. I spent so much time in telco, and then I spent so much time building that up. So you're not a fly by night. I mean, you can work on, you're prepared to work on it for years to see it through, right? And
yes. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think that's a very important point as well when you choose to work in big enterprise markets is tenacity matters. There's a lot of rejection. You will have more no's than yeses on that journey. And so, you have to have really thick skin. You have to dig in deep. And these are really important characteristics, I would say, in the modern world. You can't afford to give in. If you really have the conviction that you're doing something brilliant as a founder, and most founders really feel they do have something brilliant, then you have to buckle in for the ride. It's a tough ride. And that's a nice thing to talk about, because I think sometimes you can get misdirected with all the stuff we hear in the press about, I built this business, and particularly in today's world where you're hearing, I invented my business with AI, I hit my annual reoccurring revenue in 10 months and I'm selling, to a private equity firm in 2 years. Those are tiny success stories, that they are very, very unusual. There is no doubt that the cycle to build a startup is getting quicker and quicker and quicker. But at the same point, to really find your adoption point and grow into being a scale-up business, you have to have tenacity to go on that journey. And maybe that's another point worth talking about, which is, if you're raising money from VCs or private equity or institutions, they'll often ask you, well, what are you in this for? Are you building this to sell it, or are you building it to scale it and become super successful? And I've learned the hard way that you never say you're building it to sell it. You always say you're building it to scale it and build out your vision and meet your end game. A sale will happen by consequence of building a really good business. So you never really need to focus as a founder on I'm building it to sell it. Build a really great team, build a really good business, deliver on your vision. All of your strategic opportunities will arise if you do that well. So I guess for me, yes, we're just 3 and a bit years in. This is our commercial year. I was brave in the fact that we raised sufficient capital from really good investors that believed in our vision, to go on a journey to do a lot of that research and development and to build out those early product market fit cycles. But I needed to take the risk that says I was a practitioner in the market. I want to reinvent this industry. I think the other side of that today is, if you do a really good job on your product market fit analysis, find a really strategic opportunity in an industry, build into that with a small amount of capital and scale from them. There's different business models, and you will see it here. You've got really inventive, deep tech founders in biotech or high tech. Those cycles are longer development cycles. You have to find the right investors to go with you on the journey you're on.
So if you need to talk to someone, let's say you're not sure, you're probably not sure a lot of the times. Do you have mentors? Do you have someone you talk to?
First mentor is my wife. I think, she needs to be willing to go on the journey with me because these are demanding journeys. Second most important mentor is my business partner. You can never really do this by yourself. And so I found somebody, luckily it turned out to be a very good friend that we've worked together in many of those industry cycles, but he is diametrically opposed and completely opposite to me. And we are so complementary as a consequence. So I think it's really important to get that dynamic right. So I think the next most important thing is great people like you, Andrei.
Too kind.
It's really important to find people who could help you unpick different parts of a big strategy. In that, as I mentioned earlier, I need a technology mentor, founder. I want to find somebody that can help me understand the latest and greatest on the technology cycles. In our case, we've got some really important things on the legals and the economic expression of assets into the future. And, I needed to find people like you who we could talk about the approaches we were thinking about, the places we were going. And so sometimes you're lucky enough that you can find those people and they can become board members and they can help you officially. And I have a few stakeholders on my board that are market practitioners, and they help me knock down the doors of the really big clients we're trying to get to. I have other people in our network that are deep subject matter experts, and we can sit down on our product cycles, on our development cycles, and really debate what we're thinking about. So I think you need a mix. There's no one mentor on that. And I really enjoy the mental dexterity that brings, actually, that there's a really nice way of cross-checking. Are we getting this right? Is it really working holistically?
All right.
Amazing.
Thank you so very much for the conversation. This is amazing.
That was amazing as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I'm really thankful to have been able to met you some time ago and seen your journey. Really, really hopeful.
No, and look, thank you. You have been so powerful and helpful, and I really appreciate it, and I hope that continues.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.